Here we go. So there's been a lot of talk and social media posts and in the news about this incredible astronomical occurrence of Saturn and Jupiter visibly in the sky are meeting up, and they're going to look like they're exactly aligned. And there are all kinds of cycles in time that are referenced with this. And I have to say, even though I do follow that, there are numbers floating around that is it once in every 800 years or 400 years or 20 years or different reference points. I'm not going to get into that exact detail. This is an important energetic meeting of the archetypal energies of these planets. And so I want to share that, and I want to invite you into feeling that energy for yourself. Feeling, what does that invite you into? What does that stir up in your heart space? How does that bring you more alive and more into relationship with the cosmos, the unseen realm, the energetic realm? I know many of you work with energy and astrology and spirituality, and I know these are familiar concepts and conversations that many of us have had. And so I'm keeping one eye on the waiting room, and I'm having a hard time letting Barb in. So this invitation into a conversation with the cosmos, how can you relate to those energies represented by the planets moving through the signs of the zodiac? They're parts of us. We each have the map of the universe within us. Like our own physical DNA is a map of how our cells are made up. Well, our astrological birth chart is that map of how are the universal energies and archetypes individually mapped out for each of us. And I find this a study of astrology, this language of the energies and the archetypes and the mythology, so rich for understanding myself, for understanding people in my life, for understanding the energetic weather and the resonance that we're all living in at any given time. It gives me access to that, like looking at a map, like looking at oh, there are these key points, and I can know that, if you're on a hike, you can know, oh, there's a steep hill here. I'm going to be aware of that. And it drops off to a river canyon. And this is what's coming up on the map. You can kind of know where you are and choose how to live with it, engage with it, interact with it. And that's kind of how I see working with astrology. Like, it gives us a sense or a map of who we are, what makes us uniquely us, an individual. And within our personal universe, our astrology chart, I see each of the planets as allies or imaginary friends. They're energies that we can partner with within us. Like, to know the sun within each of us is that center of our consciousness. It's the energy that we're here to shine and embody, and that almost everyone knows their sun sign. Were you born during Aries time or Aquarius time or Leo time? You have that sense generally. But I work with my clients to meet the other parts of themselves through their chart. What is that part of you that's driven and takes action, your Mars energy? What is your sense of hope and expansion and possibility and optimism, the Jupiter energy? What's your focus and make it real, do the hard work, be responsible and mature energy, the Saturn in you? And so we each have these parts that we can call on and partner with, and then be, I believe, more conscious creators in our own lives, more intentional with how we are expressing ourselves, how we're moving through our world, and how we're interacting with each other, our come from place. When I share in these conversations and in my monthly group, we talk about, well, the universe currently, what's the map of the current universe? And that's mostly what we'll talk about today, is getting a sense of that broad energetic cosmic weather report of where are the planets in the sky, in the signs of the zodiac now, and what is that energetic invitation for us to consider. So that's what I'd like you to think about as I talk about what's currently happening. Think about, wow, how can that energy support me? How can I engage with that in a way that brings me more fully alive, more fully present, more fully engaged with this energetic thing. It's kind of funny because I mean, we communicate with language, and a lot of this energetic stuff is hard to pinpoint with words and with logic. And I see Janine nodding, it is. And it's one of the most fun things I encountered and that I do, because it weaves together that who am I, uniquely me, get to know the intimate parts of self, and how can I then share that in my world? How can I be more present, more engaged, and more, have more of me to give? And how can I understand all the people in my life a little better? And this is a wonderful screen to see. Almost everyone present, I've worked with you in your chart, so I have a sense. Which I love. So this big deal meetup of Jupiter and Saturn, they're coming together. This is the beginning of a whole new cycle. And every month we have a planetary meetup of the sun and the moon together at the new moon. And I know several of us have had conversations about the lunar cycle and new moon and starting that new cycle for understanding that energy. Well, this is every pair of planets has a cycle together. And this is tomorrow marks the beginning of a new cycle for Jupiter and Saturn. So Jupiter is the faster moving of the two because it's closer in its orbit around the sun. So Jupiter moves around the zodiac in about a year, a little over 12 months. So it takes about a year through each sign of the zodiac. So we're just today finishing up Jupiter's trip through the sign of Capricorn. So we've seen expansion of Capricorn themes, that seriousness, that organizational structure, a kind of a top-down hierarchical power structure. We've seen expansion of limitation. Capricorn is a serious sign ruled by Saturn, actually, that pulls it and makes it real. And it's an earth sign, practical, material realm, grounded energy. Jupiter has a harder time moving through Capricorn because it's like his style is being cramped. Jupiter is the expansive gas giant that just wants to expand into possibility and abundance and hope and what is possible. It's growth oriented, Jupiter. And in the sign of Saturn, which says, rein it in, Saturn pulls the energy in. It's the planet that has the beautiful rings around it. So we can see that as the boundaried energy of Saturn. We need to be able to pull in and focus and direct our energy. So Saturn brings that in, that seriousness and focus, that maturity and responsibility and authority are some of the qualities of the Saturn energy. Now, Saturn has been in Capricorn for 3 years, and it's one of his home signs. So Saturn in Capricorn is super strong. Like it's been a 3-year cycle of Saturn really working effectively. Structure, focus, but rigid contraction energy. And both of these two planets, and this has been the 2020 energy, is both of them throughout 2020 were close, and they were close with the planet Pluto, which is the planet of deep transformation and change, but the kind of change that requires a death in order to create a rebirth energy. And that Pluto energy intensity in Capricorn, breaking down structures of tradition, of systems, of hierarchy, of government. We've seen this Pluto in Capricorn intensely all around the world and within ourselves, breaking down that sense of what is my personal foundation? What do I believe is possible for me being in control or in charge in my life? And a whole lot of breakdown, dissolving, purging, detoxing kind of energy with Pluto, Jupiter, and Capricorn together. Not cause and effect, though. Here's the thing with astrology, like knowing what's happening energetically is an opportunity or an invitation for us to work with it. It's the philosophies are as above in the cosmos, what's happening, so below. So it'll be reflected. Like we get to see some of the patterns in the collective, but it's not that the planets are causing the breakdowns that we see, but those energies are connected. So with both Jupiter and Saturn meeting up, they're starting a new cycle together. So Jupiter has been traveling behind Saturn, and tomorrow it will meet up exactly with Saturn. And then because it's faster moving, it'll pull ahead in Aquarius. And this beginning point, this meetup, is happening at 0 degrees of Aquarius, the very beginning of this sign. And so it's a shift out of Capricorn and into Aquarius at the same time they're starting their new cycle. And that's part of what makes it so unique and a once in X number of years occurrence. So it's important for us to have an idea, well, what does the Aquarian archetype offer us? Because it has a really different flavor from Capricorn, which is solid and serious earth. It's traditional and foundational and persistent, tenacious energy, but it's very concerned with tradition and doing the right thing. And Aquarius energy is the air element. So we come out of the earth element, Capricorn, into the air. There's a sense of expansion and freedom. We can breathe more freely. Aquarius energy has to do with the intellect and with genius and brilliance and innovation, creativity, visionary energy. It's an eccentric energy that really celebrates the individual, the individuation of each person into their own brilliance. At the same time, an interconnectivity and humanitarian focus. And so I like to say sometimes that Aquarius is where a part of us where we get to fly our freak flag and be as unique and strange and weird and wonderful as we are. And so does everyone else. It's really, I know some of you, we've had a conversation. I am a Leo. I'm the opposite sign of Aquarius. So I need to learn to incorporate some of this. I'm super special individuated, which is kind of the voice of Leo, into Aquarius with and so is everyone else. And so during Aquarius season every year, when the sun is moving through Aquarius from January 21st to February 21st approximately, we all get a sense of that, or that conscious awareness, the light shining through the Aquarian energy. And some of you were born during that time. And you hold that. That's the energy that you're here to shine, is through that visionary, eccentric, creative, out-of-the-box problem solving. What's the new possibility? But there's an intellectual thinking, detached kind of energy. It's objective. Whereas some of the other energies hold more of a heart center or an emotional tone or a practical tone, depending on their qualities. So Jupiter in Aquarius, it's going to expand this sense of freedom, individuality, humanitarian focus, this interconnectivity of all of us, greater sense of egalitarianism and coming from the people and valuing what's right for everyone. Jupiter brings in faith and belief and growth and possibility. And so I see this as a really positive shift as we come out of 2020 that's been so hard, that's revealed so many of the inequalities in our world. And now the growth and the expansion through Aquarius, I think, is going to keep bringing our conscious awareness to what is the way we can honor everyone. How can we consider the interconnectivity and the value of everyone? So I see that as a really strong potential in this energy. And then Saturn, bringing its serious focus of hard work, its sense of time and attention, of bringing the energy into focus. Saturn was often called the Lord of Karma, the Lord of Time. So it's really, what are those boundaries? And how can we work with that sense of boundariness in our lives? And Saturn and Jupiter together, it's like we've got expansion and contraction. And so much of the world really needs both. We need that expansive possibility and growth and optimism. And we need the contraction of like, well, how are we going to work with this? How are we going to make this real, give it dimension and realness? And so this whole new cycle is a new, it's like up-leveling this relationship of our hope, growth, and possibility, Jupiter qualities, and that serious attention to doing the work of it, Saturn. So I feel, personally, I feel really excited about that and really curious as to how will that show up in my life. Now, I've been working with my chart and looking at the part of my chart that holds the Aquarius energy is where this cycle will show up for us, is where in our own chart does that live, and how can we bring ourselves more fully to that interaction. And yet I do believe we can work with the general picture as well. But for people that I work with one-on-one, we really personalize it and bring it into how is this energy going to be speaking to you throughout this cycle? How will Jupiter and Saturn each touch your chart? How will they meet up with the sun in your chart or your planets in your chart? So for example, Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius will meet up with the sun for those of you who are born during Aquarius season. I know, Dennis, you're an Aquarius, so Jupiter and Saturn will both pass over the sun and bring to you personally that expansion and growth and that new level of focused attention and maturity in an energetic sense. People who are born during the season of Leo, it's going to be opposite your sun. So it's going to be that challenge to expand the polarity and integrate the energies into sense of self. That excitement of like learning and growing through the polarity energy. People who were born during Taurus or Scorpio season are going to have it as a challenging energy, a galvanizing, calling you forth energy. The air signs, so air signs are Aquarius and Libra and Gemini. I see a Libra friend here. The air signs will have an easy flow of communication from Jupiter and Saturn throughout this year to your sun, to the essence of who you are. So that boost of like, it'll be in communication easily, but an easy flow from Saturn doesn't always feel easy. It can feel like, oh, well, there's some sort of constraint here, or I'm having to push up against some energetic boundary. So again, in small groups or one-on-one, we work with that more specifically. But in the general sense, the air sign people will feel this personally flow because they're in the same element. It's speaking easy to the air signs. Aquarius speaks with Aries and Sagittarius in a supportive way, air feeding fire signs. And so those will have that like easy right hand gal kind of energy to the Jupiter and Saturn throughout the year. And Cancer and, oh my gosh, Aquarius and Cancer and Virgo are in a kind of interesting angle to Aquarius in that they're energies that don't quite get each other, but they're intriguing. So there's like I have to really adjust. In my groups, I often talk about it being like the dog tilt energy. You know, dogs look at you like, huh? It's just sort of, it's not straight on, it's kind of, huh? So that's like, you really don't get it, but you want to. There's an intrigue there. So Cancer and Virgo sun folks will have that kind of feeling with the Aquarius energy. They don't have anything in common. They're not the same element. They're not on the same polarity. They're not, you know, perpendicular to one another. They're just kind of in an uncomfortable place. But it's touching all of us in some way. And it's also quite amazing. Oh, Pisces. Yeah, Pisces is the next door. Pisces and Capricorn to Aquarius are the next door energies. So Capricorn precedes Aquarius and Pisces follows. And so there's, it's kind of a finishing up and a next door energy for Pisces. Nancy, thanks for putting your question in. It's happening on the winter solstice. And this is a significant time in our yearly cycle where, based on the Earth's orbit around the sun and the tilt on the axis, it's in the northern hemisphere, our longest day of the year, longest night of the year, our shortest daylight. And so many of us celebrate the solstice and that return to light. The days after December 21st begin to get lighter, and the light often symbolizing the hope and the return of, you know, light and possibility, and that element, you know, that energetic, oh, we're gonna, you know, we're going towards the light now. But this time of year is the darkest, most inward, most yin energy. And the solstice with astrology is when the sun moves into the sign of Capricorn. So while Jupiter and Saturn are exiting Capricorn for Aquarius, the Sun and Mercury are moving into Capricorn. So our conscious awareness and the communication style of perception, Mercury, is going to be through the Capricorn lens for most of the next month. And so the solstice marking that new cycle of the sun and our daylight, it's like that winter, beginning the winter season of going within, being in the dark, but it's the growth and awareness that happens inward during this time that builds the strength for the new growth that we mark with the spring equinox, Aries season bursting in onto the scene, like the seed. I see Capricorn is the seed underground, and all the growth is going to be the little tendrils of roots digging in with the substance of the earth, soaking up that earth element, the Capricorn, and growing from that. So at any given time, we're at different stages and places with different cycles. And this is why it's so multidimensional and so fascinating to me, is that it's dynamic and multifaceted. And, and I know it's very confusing as well when you don't know the details. So, but this conversation today, I wanted to open us to that Jupiter-Saturn new cycle and in the Aquarius energy of innovation and egalitarianism and a new vision, what's possible. And knowing that at the same time, we've got the Sun and Mercury moving into Capricorn of what's that earthy inward foundation that I'm going to be building upon. Our New Year's traditions and our culture of, you know, resolutions and goals and getting practical, paying attention to the details, whether that's details of our finances or our exercise or our diets or our, you know, the doingness, very earth element. But the Capricorn energy brings our focus down to like, what is foundational? What's supporting and what's the next step? And I love this, that we've got them concurrently, like this vast expansion, the air and ideas and possibility, and our consciousness and thinking at the grounded level. You know, what are the small steps we can take? What are the key elements or ingredients to focus on? So I think that's the broad brush that I wanted to give you all. I'd love to now open it up for conversation and exploration. And what I'd love for the questions to be as general as we can rather than specific to your chart. So thinking about how might you engage with this energy of growth and expansion through new ideas and new, like a new matrix. I know what I wanted to add in. There's a concept from Eastern philosophy called Indra's net. Is anyone familiar with Indra's net? So it's like, think of like a fisherman's net, where there are points where the threads connect. And at each of those threads is like a brilliant jewel, or I'm picturing it like a disco ball, because I love disco balls. But they're multifacets, the light, the shimmering, the brilliance at the connection points. But this whole web of connection. And to me, that feels very Aquarian, because it's all interconnected. And the points of the individual points are the brilliance and the light and the facets. And so I see all of us as being in Aquarius energy interconnected like that, where each one of us, and we can look on our Zoom screen and see the faces in the different squares, each one unique and brilliant and shiny and very individual. And yet we have this interconnection of how we're connected today. So I wanted to offer that. And there's something magical and like a magical matrix in Aquarius, like time and space, like those rules, that's very Capricorn, the rules of reality. Aquarius is like, all's possible. So with the freedom, I'm gonna stop broadcasting and enter into conversation. What's coming up for you guys? Nancy, yeah.
So I write not every morning, but I try to write in the mornings. And then I do my tarot cards. And this morning, after that, it was like I couldn't get up out of my seat. There was more that had to be said. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, I'll just keep writing. And I did this like 5-page download, and I kept, as I'm writing this out, I'm going, and there's more, and there's more. And I even got up and left to move on, because I was just like, I caught between the, okay, I've done enough.
Yeah.
And then I got up and left, and there was more. So I think for me, it was paying attention to the download and taking action, and at least capturing it, and capturing what I could capture enough of. Mm-hmm. And that I continued as my morning went on. I had my phone, and I was like adding stuff in my phone, and I'm going, mm-hmm. This is like crazy. Yeah. But it kept, so I don't know if it's, I mean, it's the energy. Clearly I'm feeling this pull, this, whatever it is. And also the celebration of 2020 and what it has allowed me to be able to do. And if you ever have, any of you have time today, watch CBS Sunday Morning. It's all on music and creativity today. But it was listening to Paul McCartney talk about what he did during 2020. And this guy's got a new record coming, a new LP, CD coming out. And I'm going, that's the energy I want to harness. And so I'm just feeling this place of coming together, and it's still internal. It's not out there. It's still the seed.
Yeah, so I love that answer. Ooh, exciting. And I wanted to talk, I think part of what this download experience is through the Mercury function. Wow. And Mercury right now, it hasn't yet moved to Capricorn. It's at the very end of Sagittarius, which is very expansive, very much about finding and seeking the meaning in things. And Sagittarius is a fire sign of creativity and faith and belief and what's possible. Yeah. And so that it came through in this huge whoosh of download for you, and that you were so, like, the music and creativity so speaks to you. It's beautiful. And trusting that you capture enough.
Yeah, I've captured enough.
Yeah.
That it could either be a thesis or a program. I don't know. Or it could just be
possibility, right? So
Fun possibility and exercise.
right, right. So I would encourage you to think about, well, how can you take from your incredibly creative download this morning as the energies of Jupiter and Saturn combine, like this expansive hope and possibility, and Saturn giving it some form?
Mm-hmm.
What's possible? Yeah, in the newness and a
We'll
sense
see.
of freedom and newness. Yeah, that's
Yes.
exciting.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
So everybody, if you're listening, if someone's calling to you, jump for it. Go for it. Don't hesitate. I guess that's my words of wisdom.
Thank you for that. I love that. Yeah. What else? What else are people noticing, or what's coming through for you?
Let me throw something in, Tiff. One of the things throughout this entire pandemic that has troubled me is that people keep talking about returning to normal. And I guess it's the Aquarian in me that is saying, let's return to better than normal. Let's do something beyond where we are.
Mhm.
And given that I'm as you kind of hinted to, a rather prototypical Aquarian, I'm searching for how can I, in my actions, in my correspondence, in my conversations, open doors for others without it sounding obvious that it's what I'm trying to do. How do my actions reflect my inner feelings better?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
it as an incredible year ahead of us.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I do think that the universe is exactly inviting us into, not back to normal. There's no going back to normal.
Right.
We are moving forward into the future, into this Aquarian future where we have no idea. It's like the new frontier. It's a new world. And we're so ready for this. And so many dimensions. And I know, Janine, you have beautiful ways of describing the new world through other paradigms. But it's time for us all to tap into that and to expand our way of seeing and understanding. And it feels like being willing to speak that, show that, and be seen in that uniqueness and brilliance. Dennis, something you said in there, like, oh, I don't want them to know that I'm thinking of it. It's like, yeah, you do actually. Like, there's more of the gift when you can speak from the way you see life, the way, how you want to invite people into considering things, like owning it at your heart and expressing it in that new possibility, that creative visionary way, is a way of really integrating that Leo and Aquarius polarity, of owning it at your heart for all of us. This is for all of us, whatever our unique map is, being ourselves at the heart of who we are, and giving ourselves the freedom and expansion to grow and to explore new frontiers and new ideas and be in that Aquarian energy, which is that unique individual brilliance and being interconnected. Like, there's no threat of being kicked off the island for being your unique, brilliant self with Aquarius energy, which is such a concept that I'm like, really? That's not how I have had it made up in my life. Like, in my life, I make it up that if I'm too weird, nobody's going to like me. And it's been years of working with that. And I know conversations with many of you about that. But I think we're stepping into a whole new way of like, yeah, we actually get to be uniquely who we are with all of our weird and wonderful, unique and bizarre qualities, and know that we're all part of the whole. We're all in the universe together.
Tiff, it's funny, excuse me for chiming back in, but you just triggered something for me. And I'd like to share it with the others to understand you better. When you were growing up, I remember we used to talk about weird, and weird it came across as a negative. And I remember so often saying, wait a minute, there's nothing saying weird is bad. Weird can be good. Depends on how you use it. And I think you've touched on it. I think you're saying, oh,
Yes, and part of the old paradigms and a very Capricorn kind of feeling of it is like tradition, going along with the crowd, being part of the normal expression, doing like having a regular job, doing the normal things was what gave you belonging. And this is a whole different way of looking at it with much greater freedom and love for who we are and acceptance of each other following our own paths. And I know, for me, 20 years ago, becoming a coach, and 6 years ago, starting to work as an astrologer, these were both edges for me of like, can I give up my traditionally understood role as a teacher in schools? And can I work with people one-on-one in a way that speaks to me at my heart as a coach, of knowing who people are and what's important to them and what they're wanting, was an edge of, stepping beyond to what's more true. And with the astrology, can I work with this really woo-woo modality and not be seen as weird? I mean, I really struggled with that. And I feel like that's something that I'm moving and evolving. I know I shared with some of you that I feel like something's shifting and there's a new way for me of being and working in the world, claiming more of it, claiming more of, yes, I bring my skills as a teacher and a coach and an astrologer, and as a spiritual magician, and really interweaving all of these things. But it does take care of that. In a way, we've been so groomed to be normal and follow a path that says, work hard, get a real job, have health insurance, do the normal thing. In your 20s, find a partner, get married, buy a house, get a dog, have kids. Like these are sort of like normal trajectories, and that's not for everyone. And I think we've been seeing this transition for years too, of how many ways people live and work and love and what we create, and how much richer our world is when we have that diversity and that inclusion. What else is coming up for folks? How are you feeling it or sensing it?
Well, I'll say something, but I don't know what I'm going to say. So
that's how it went for me too.
Yeah. I'm loving this, Tiffin. This is the first time that I've seen some of your Facebook lives, but this is the first time I'm jumping in. So the first thing that I say is, while I've had my chart done throughout my life, I've had a push-pull with understanding astrology, and mostly like, it's so confusing. Just tell me the impact. Don't tell me this planet's here and that. It's
right.
Crazy.
Right.
But when you started talking about that, I'm going to cry, that we each have a map of the universe in us, and that I'm just really like, oh, that's a whole new thing. So I'm feeling very inspired to feel I have a map of the universe, the stars, that's part of my DNA. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
How huge and unique and expansive you are in you. And it's just a map. It's not the territory of, like, there's that expression, the map is not the territory. Like, it's a map and a guide, but your unique will and your love and your expression co-creates it. And that's a lot of what I talk about too, that co-creating with the cosmos. How do we work and dance with this together? Yeah. The universe within and the universe that's happening all around us. And in interpersonal ways, how do you and I relate based on our unique maps and the connection points? Because there are all connection points, And I think, so Janine is an Aries and I'm a Leo. I think initially we connected around that spark of fire and creativity and fun, woo, Right. And there are other parts, but like that's a fast, easy connection. Mm-hmm. And others, similarly.
Yeah, that's so cool to know. So thank you for that personal gift today. It just feels like yeah. And then in terms of this time, I just feel like I have ants in my pants. I have felt particularly the start of this year, but even for the last couple of years, somewhere in here I've had a second Saturn return and just so now I just feel like you know, so when I hear Saturn again, it's like, you know,
right. Yeah.
I swear I'm a truck driver, but it's like, get that fucking thing away from me. It's just been so hard. So I'm liking that there's
right. No, Janine, you're speaking to that beautifully. The Saturn energy of constriction and Mercury, it's like, yeah, that really hard driver, that really drill sergeant, and like, yeah, get in the way. Like, who wants that? You want freedom.
Yeah.
But and you're mentioning another cycle that many of us are aware of, and in our culture, the Saturn return is one of those concepts from astrology that is becoming more familiar. Saturn travels around the sun 29 years. Well, 28 to 30 years. And so when we have our first Saturn return, that means that Saturn's gone all the way around the zodiac and has returned to where it is in our chart. And so it's that time of, a completion of a cycle. And it's a time to assess and to reckon with, have I met the Saturn invitation? Like our first Saturn return, and Cordai, you're approaching that in your mid-20s, you know, coming up to it. And those of us in our late 50s are approaching the second time around. It's that reckoning. The first one is like, oh my gosh. And we in our culture associate it with almost 30. Like, oh my God, am I a real adult yet? Have I done the real things? Do I have my real job? Have I found a partner? Have I had kids if I want to have kids? Like, am I really an adult yet? Is kind of the question tone of the first Saturday. And we'll find a lot of people get married in their late 20s. Are they okay career path now, not just have fun jobs or any of those kinds of things. And then the second time is like, wow, you've been living as a real adult for 30 years almost. And then the second Saturn return is a time to question like, okay, I am, and I've been doing it for the outer reasons. I've been meeting the form and the expectations. And now the Saturn work is what's real for me, what's meaningful for me. And a lot of times around the second Saturn return, we see people grappling with questions of, is my work meaningful? So we'll see career changes, second careers, a lot of people coming out of like corporate or capitalistic jobs and into teaching or into nonprofit foundation work or ways of giving back that they find more meaning in. And a lot of times we find people completing their work time, and entering retirement in a sense where being and doing in the world is shifting, generally towards more meaning and more freedom.
Yeah, but in the process of it, it feels very like someone I had an experience of feeling stepped on, like I'm a bug on my back or something. Help me get up. So I'm, like I said, I'm excited to hear about this pairing and that it's good. There's an opportunity.
Yes. So yes, and there's good and there's opportunity. Does that mean it's immediately the fresh start, expansive freedom that we're all so hungry for at the end of 2020? I don't think so. Right?
Boo.
Boo. I mean, the seed, but think of like that seeded energy. It's the beginning of the cycle. It's going to grow and come into itself. Like the moon cycle that we can see in the sky. We've got a crescent moon right now, and it'll be gaining in light. That's kind of as Jupiter meets with Saturn and then starts moving, it's like Jupiter's going to start being in that crescent phase in relation to Saturn. So, right, I'm getting my new, here's your new cycle, here's this new seriousness for your growth and potential and expansion, Jupiter. But now what are you going to do with it? And it takes time for it to come into its fullness.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned something about Mercury, and I don't really know a lot about astrology. So all I know is Mercury retrograde, and every time there's Mercury retrograde, I have to send my computer in, and all this. So what's happening with Mercury? And there's got to be more to it than just wrecking my computer and phone and everything.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. So Mercury is another one that has gotten some understanding and some press in our culture. So Mercury travels closest to the sun, and from our position on Earth and our relative speed of orbit, a couple of times a year it appears to move backwards through the zodiac. That's the retrograde mode. And Mercury is the planet that its essence is communication and travel, technology, all the ways that we connect communication wise. So during Mercury retrograde, the known things are like communication snafus, technology, especially the technology that has to do with our communication, like our computers and our phones and things, go wonky. They're not working smoothly in that forward direction that we're used to, but they're like stepping back, and Mercury retrograde happens 3 to 4 times a year in a predictable cycle. And this year, all 3 of the Mercury retrograde periods will be in air signs. So we will have a Mercury retrograde while the sun is in Aquarius. And so I think it starts in February sometime. But we can, and this is part of how I work with, it's like I look at an overview of the year, like when are those times? Oh, during that time of Mercury retrograde, I'm going to be more conscious of communication, more aware that clients may need to reschedule. We might get our wires crossed and have time zone mess ups, or have, not getting through, or I'll have to take my computer in for a reboot or a reconfiguration or something. But the invitation from Mercury retrograde is that time to reflect, go back over, like to slow down, first of all, and reflect and review, revise, reboot, re. And so we can start to partner with it more positively. And Janine, I invite you to explore that this year. How can this, instead of, oh no, Mercury retrograde is going to ruin my life and crash my computer and kill my phone and all my friends will never talk to me because we'll never get our messages through. And I mean, we can go that way. That's one way to partner with it, is that freak out, worry, it's a disaster waiting to happen and the universe is against me. And why do I have to have Mercury retrograde all the time?
Yes.
That's a possibility. And I think it's not the best choice.
You think?
But that possibility, can I be just aware of it? It's time to proofread and edit and double check. And I sent my client an email, but why don't I also send a text reminder of our appointment? Or why don't I also just back things up and check in, And be more aware.
What in the positive does Mercury bring? I mean, I even say,
yeah,
I really do get the reassess and all that is great to pull back. I do understand that. But is there, when it's not in retrograde, what the heck does that thing do?
It's the planet of communication and perception. Mercury in our own chart shows our style of perceiving and communicating. Now, this was huge for me because I, as a Leo, very self-referential, I assumed most of my life that people think the way I think. Well, guess what? I mean, I've encountered that not being true all of my life and gotten very frustrated about it. But now I have a way of understanding it a little better. Oh, right, I see the world and communicate through the lens of Mercury and Virgo that's influenced by Uranus and Pluto details, but that's my way of perceiving and communicating. And other people, you all have Mercury in your charts in a different energy. And Mercury traveling through the zodiac in the year in the universe for all of us, it's I kind of think of it like a radio station or a frequency. So Mercury moving right now, it's at the very end of Sagittarius. And Nancy was speaking to that expansive download, creative ideas, new ways of believing things and possibilities. And then for the next about 3 weeks, Mercury will be in Capricorn, turning our perception to the Capricorn channel of what's foundational, what's practical, what's the next necessary step. Let's plan this out. It's how thrilled do we get at the end of the year to get our new calendar and our new pens and pencils and okay, once I'm done feasting, I then am going to clean up my food and my diet. And I'm already thinking I should be getting some more exercise, all things like that, the practical steps. But Mercury helps us think about that stuff through that lens. And then it'll move into Aquarius and it'll help us think about those innovations and those new possibilities.
I see.
So it's like an invitation to perceive and think about things through a different lens, or changing the channel. Yeah. But you will always really perceive things through your Mercury sign. But then, however, that sign communicates with the current sign, that's where the unique dance is for you.
Great. Thanks. That helps a lot.
Good. Oh, these are rich questions. What else?
Tiff, a very quick one. Did you say that cycle was 28 years?
Saturn cycle is about 28 to 29 and a half years.
I'm at that point where I'm looking.
You are actually almost at your third one.
I was just going to say, I was going to say it as, I wonder what's behind door 3.
You're approaching the third door, and I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to do a reading with a woman who was having her third Saturn return. She was in her late 80s. And she had been someone who'd studied astrology all her life too. So she was, I learned so much with her. So sort of after the second Saturn return, more meaningful work, more, how do I want to contribute is sort of the theme then of that post-second Saturn return. The third Saturn return, she was describing that as feeling like it's really that surrendering that need to be doing and contributing at all. And trusting that her being and essence is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't ever make it to their third Saturn, age-wise. But she was experiencing it in a much more spiritual oneness kind of way, while still alive, like knowing that she had worked hard and contributed and been engaged with the doing of life, but now she was entering a stage where it's trusting that that's enough, and she just is, and that's her gift of contribution.
Thank you.
Yeah. But at 84, 85, you're having a return of the planet Uranus, which has an 84-year cycle. So there's another cycle to look at. Another layer of complexity, but that's a a cycle that you're currently in. And at each different age, we're likely in different parts of different cycles. And many of us on the call right now have been through what's called the Uranus opposition at 42, or the Uranus square at about 63. And Uranus is the planet of awakening and change.
Can you tell me more about the Uranus square? Because I'm just turning 55.
All right. So Uranus is the planet of awakening and sudden change and brilliant downloads, like that shift of consciousness and awakening and freedom, greater freedom. And whenever planets are square to each other or 90 degrees apart in the zodiac, there's that confrontation, like a four-way stop. You're coming from different angles. So Uranus in your chart is meeting Uranus in the sky in that it's a tense kind of a meetup, a confrontation, or you're encountering each other, and there has to be an adjustment. So right now, the planet Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. It's shaking our natural world, our sense of our values, and what we value as important. Taurus themes are being awakened. So that issues around climate change and the natural world are so important and at a crisis point. Uranus through Taurus is like waking us up to the fact that this is important and we're at a crisis. And hopefully that awakening will lead to those Aquarian, let's improve this and find a creative solution, or 2 or 10 billion. Yeah. But personally, Nancy, this can be a real time Uranus square time of awakening to more of your awareness, your sense of freedom, your sense of spirituality and connection.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Great questions. All right, we're coming up to the top of the hour, about 3 more minutes. Is there anything else you'd like to share or ask or engage with? See anyone jumping? Just unmute.
Tiffin, I'm just curious. You've said so much, and I'm just curious if you can sum up I love this, but can you sum up the best use of this month ahead or this time? I know that's I know you've said so
It is
much.
because there are several things happening.
And I know it depends on who we are personally.
Yeah, but thank you for that. I mean, the opportunity, let's review. So this new cycle of Jupiter and Saturn working together for our growth and expansion in a focused work on it way. So the growth and expansion is kind of the energy of Jupiter, and the focused work energy of it is Saturn. And this is through the innovative and humanitarian energy of Aquarius. And this next month, we'll have the Sun in Capricorn and Mercury in Capricorn. So really, Capricorn Sun time is a time to examine our own foundations, our own sense of authority, and what's practical and valuable to us. And it's a great time to plug what's next, like in my group work. I've been doing these month-long explorations of the sun moving through each sign. Call it the Astro Coaching Group. We're starting the Capricorn group on Tuesday evening. We meet 4 times on Zoom, half hours, Tuesday evenings. And then each person also gets a 30-minute session with me, one-on-one with your chart to learn and see how does that Capricorn energy show up uniquely for you? And what are those invitations from the universe directly to engage? So if you're interested in that, that's the currently the cheapest way to work with me. It's really a deal, the half-hour personal session and 4 group calls for only $49. So if you are on my mailing list, the info is there. If you're in my Facebook group, Your Stellar Life, it will be there as well. Many of you have participated this year in those conversations, and I've loved that exploration, and invite others of you to join in if it's sparking your curiosity, if that hearing what's the universe resonating, where can I plug in with the current energy, and how can I have another way of seeing and knowing myself that can bring in greater self-awareness and fill you up, and so you can feel more empowered to be yourself. Because I think this whole Aquarian energy is really calling all of us to be uniquely ourselves, but also to be aware that we are all interconnected and we're all special and unique. No one is more special or unique than anyone else. So it's that's the paradox. But it's like this is amping up both. Everyone is incredibly unique and special and brilliant, and we're all interconnected and equal. Both and. And then I work with people one-on-one over time with the coaching model, like really in-depth conversations and explorations of meaning making for you, of that knowing, and really a process of distilling and peeling away the expectations and the energies that aren't you, but that we've taken on from being alive on the planet and part of a culture and in our families, and all those messages of what is it to be a person here, and what's it, all the enculturation message, all the cultural messages that aren't our true identity. So my clients, we peel that away, get to the essence of, we refine and polish and sparkle all the facets of you, and then you can be more aligned with who you really are and able to engage more powerfully with the people in your life, with the work you're doing, with the creative things that are coming through you. And I think that being more fully yourself is really important. And that we all are better off when each of us is being more truly who we are. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I really appreciate it.
Thank
And
you,
so great to see each of you and to know you're here. And Guy, thank you for jumping in and taking a chance when we don't know each other yet. I hope you got something out of it. I'd love to hear from you one-on-one if you'd like. Have a wonderful solstice and holiday celebrations. And can't wait to see what you do with your unique brilliance and how I get to appreciate it and see it. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy solstice.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffin.
Happy solstice. All right. Guy, are you willing to turn your video and say hi? I'd love to meet you. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.